They thought Earth would grieve quietly, then the sky turned human part. The sky over Chicago had not been blue in weeks. Thick gray smoke hung low, mixing with ash that drifted like snow from a fire that never stopped burning. The city was broken. Towers that once scraped the clouds now leaned like tired giants, their glass eyes shattered. Streets were cracked open, filled with rubble and the quiet rustle of wind through empty homes. No cars moved, no voices called out. Only the distant groan of metal and the soft hiss of rain on hot stone broke the silence. Leo Carter walked through it all with a dented helmet under his arm and a rifle slung across his back. He was 28, lean from hunger, but his eyes were sharp. He moved like someone who had learned to listen more than speak. His boots crunched over broken glass as he passed what used to be a bookstore. A child's shoe lay in the doorway, small and bright red, covered in dust. He looked away. He had seen too many things like that. 3 months had passed since the Krell came. They had not landed armies or sent diplomats. They had simply appeared in orbit, dark ships like obsidian teeth against the stars, and rained fire down on every major city. It lasted less than an hour. When it was over, half the world's population was gone. The Krell did not stay to rule. They did not even send a message. They just left, broadcasting a single transmission across every channel they could reach. Earth is pacified. Resistance is extinct. They thought that was the end. But Leo was still breathing. So were others. In basements, subway tunnels, and forests far from the blast zones, people had survived. They dug through ruins for canned food, boiled rainwater, and shared batteries like gold. They did not cheer. They did not plan grand rebellions. Most just tried to stay alive one more day. Grief was heavy and it moved slowly like fog. Leo had lost his sister Maya in the first strike. She had been in a school near Lake Michigan, learning how to code. He had found her tablet a week later, half melted, still playing a song she liked. He kept it in his pack, wrapped in cloth. He didn't turn it on anymore, but he touched it every night before sleeping. He was heading toward the old university campus now. Rumor said a group there had working solar panels and a radio that could reach other survivor clusters. He needed supplies, but more than that, he needed to know if anyone else was still trying to connect the pieces. As he crossed what remained of Grant Park, he saw movement. A woman stood near a collapsed fountain, her back to him, scanning the sky with binoculars. She wore a patched-up jacket and had her dark hair tied back in a messy braid. She didn't flinch when he called out. "Hey," Leo said, keeping his voice low. "You alone?" She turned slowly. Her eyes were tired but alert. "For now," she said. "You?" "Same." He stopped a few yards away, hands open to show he meant no harm. "Heard there's a group at the university." "There is," she said. "I'm Dana, used to teach atmospheric physics here. Leo, aerospace engineer." "Or I was." She gave a small nod. "They'll let you in if you've got useful skills. Or if you're not carrying the plague." "No plague," he said. "Just hunger and bad luck." She almost smiled. "Almost. Come on then. Let's stay quiet." Krell drones still fly over sometimes. They don't attack, but they watch. They walk together through the ruins. Dana moved with purpose, like she knew every broken path and hidden alley. She told him that the group had about 40 people, doctors, teachers, a retired firefighter, 2 teenagers who'd survived by hiding in a meat locker. They shared everything. No leaders, just decisions made by vote. "Do you think they'll come back?" Leo asked as they neared the campus gates, which were now barricaded with buses and shipping containers. "The Krell?" Dana glanced up at the sky. "I don't know. But if they do, we won't be ready. We've got no weapons, no ships, no way to fight back. Then what are we doing?" "Surviving," she said simply. "And remembering. That's all we have left." Inside the campus, life hummed in a quiet, careful way. Tents lined the quad. A woman boiled soup over a small stove. A man repaired a bicycle with parts from a car. Children played a silent game with bottle caps. No one shouted. No one laughed loudly. Joy felt dangerous, like it might draw attention. Leo was given a cot in a repurposed lecture hall. That night, as rain began to fall again, he sat outside under a tarp and looked up. The clouds were thick, rolling slowly like they carried secrets. He thought about Maya. He thought about the Krell ships, cold and silent in the dark. He thought about how easy it would be to just lie down and stop fighting. But then he heard something. Faint, almost lost in the rain. A voice. Not one voice, but many. Whispers layered over each other, rising and falling like wind through trees. He sat up straight. Dana was nearby, staring at the sky too. "Do you hear that?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I've heard it before. Near the lake, near the ruins of the radio tower. Always after it rains, and what is it?" "I don't know," she said. "But it sounds human." They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the sky speak in voices that shouldn't be there. The Krell had left Earth to rot. They thought Grieve would be quiet. They thought no one would care, but the sky was listening. And it remembered. They thought Earth would grieve quietly. Then the sky turned human part. 2 weeks passed and the whispers in the sky grew louder. At first only a few people heard them, those who stood alone at dawn or walked the edges of ruined towns at night. But soon others began to notice strange things. Clouds gathered in shapes that looked too much like faces. Storms rolled in without warning, circling a single building or a patch of graves before vanishing as quickly as they came. In Texas, a group of survivors swore they saw the outline of a woman in the thunderheads, arms outstretched like she was shielding them from the rain. In Oregon, an old man claimed the wind carried his grandson's voice, calling his name in perfect pitch. Leo and Dana talked about it every evening. They sat on the roof of the old science building, wrapped in blankets, watching the sky shift above them. Dana had set up a small array of sensors, salvaged from weather stations and university labs, that measured pressure, humidity, and electromagnetic pulses. At first, the readings made no sense. The data jumped in patterns that looked more like music than science. "It's not random," she said one night, tracing a line on a cracked tablet. "There's rhythm here." "Like a heartbeat," Leo frowned. "You think the sky is alive?" "I don't know what to think," she admitted. "But it's reacting to us. When we gather, the signals get stronger. When someone cries near the sensors, the air pressure changes. It's like, it feels what we feel," they told the others, but most were too tired to believe in miracles. Some called it stress or shared hallucinations from grief and hunger. Only a few listened closely. Mira, a former radio technician, Eli, a high school teacher who knew Morse code, and Ben, a quiet teenager who had lost his whole family but still carried a notebook full of sky sketches. Then came the signal. It started in New Mexico, where a cluster of ham radio operators had kept their equipment running on solar power. One evening, as static hissed through their speakers, a new sound emerged, not from space but from the atmosphere itself. It was a low hum layered with voices singing an old lullaby. The operators recorded it and sent the file through a chain of runners and bike messengers until it reached Chicago. Dana played it in the lecture hall, the sound crackling from a battered speaker. Everyone fell silent. The lullaby was familiar. "Hush, little baby." But the voices were countless, overlapping, some young, some old, some broken with tears. At the end, a single clear voice whispered, "We are still here." Leo's hands shook. He recognized that last voice. It sounded like Maya. After that, no one could deny it anymore. Something was happening in the sky. Not a ghost, not a god, but something born from Earth itself, shaped by the pain and memory of billions. They started calling it Eris after an old word for air and spirit. Dana worked day and night, connecting more sensors, mapping the patterns. She discovered that Eris wasn't just listening, it was learning. When survivors lit candles for the dead, thin trails of light appeared in the upper atmosphere. When children laughed during a rare game of tag, the clouds above them swirled into spirals of silver mist. And when someone spoke a name into the wind, that name sometimes echoed back minutes later, carried on a warm breeze. One afternoon, a Krell scout ship appeared on the horizon. It was small, sleek, and silent, gliding low over the Midwest like a shark in shallow water. Panic spread through the camp. People hid in basements, clutching weapons they knew were useless. Leo grabbed his rifle and stood on the roof with Dana, watching the ship draw closer. But Eris moved first. The sky darkened not with storm clouds, but with a slow rolling wave of fog that rose from the ground like breath. It curled around the scout ship, thick and white, glowing faintly with blue light. The ship slowed, then stopped midair as if caught in invisible hands. For 10 long minutes, nothing happened. Then the fog gently pushed the vessel upward, guiding it back toward space like a parent returning a lost child. The ship did not fire. It did not scan. It simply turned and left. When it was gone, the fog dissolved into rain, soft, warm rain that smelled like pine and wet earth. People stepped out of hiding, staring at the sky in wonder. That wasn't defense, Dana whispered. That was communication, Leo nodded. It didn't fight. It showed them we're not empty. Word spread fast. Survivors from other zones began making the journey to Chicago, not just for safety but to witness Eris. A woman from Detroit brought a violin and played under the open sky every night. The next morning, a perfect echo of her song drifted down from the clouds. A boy from St. Louis drew a picture of his dog and held it up to the wind. Hours later, a cloud shaped exactly like that dog trotted across the sky, tail wagging in the breeze. Eris was becoming more than a voice. It was becoming a presence. Leo started talking to it. Not out loud at first, just in his head while he fixed generators or sorted supplies. He'd think of Maya, and sometimes the wind would pick up, cool against his neck like a hand resting on his shoulder. Once, during a long night watch, he whispered, "Are you her?" The air stilled. Then a single drop of rain fell on his palm, warm like a tear. He didn't need an answer after that. Dana, meanwhile, tried to understand how Eris worked. She believed it wasn't magic. It was science twisted by emotion. Decades of human technology left behind in orbit, tangled with weather systems, charged by the collective grief of a planet. Satellites, cell towers, even old radio waves, they had all become part of something new. A mind made of air and memory. We didn't build it, she told Leo one evening. We became it. As summer faded into fall, the survivors changed too. They stopped hiding. They rebuilt gardens on rooftops. They held quiet memorials under open skies. They sang, not just to remember the dead, but to speak to the living air around them. And the sky listened. It watched over them like a parent. It warned them of coming storms by painting red streaks in the dawn. It guided lost travelers by shaping clouds into arrows. It even seemed to mourn with them. On the anniversary of the bombardment, the entire sky turned gray and wept for 3 full days. The Krell had thought Earth would be silent. They thought grief would be small and private, buried under rubble. But grief, when shared by billions, does not stay quiet. It rises, it breathes, and sometimes it speaks back. They thought Earth would grieve quietly. Then the sky turned human. Part 3. Leo and Dana no longer slept much. Not because they were afraid, but because every night brought something new from the sky. Eris was changing. It wasn't just echoing voices or shaping clouds anymore. It was starting to act with purpose, with care, almost like a guardian. When a group of survivors in Denver ran out of clean water, a gentle rain fell only over their camp for 2 days, filling every container they set out. When raiders tried to steal supplies from a settlement in Iowa, a sudden wall of fog rolled in so thick that the attackers got lost and turned back in confusion. Eris didn't hurt anyone. It simply made sure harm did not reach those who meant no harm. Leo watched all of this with quiet awe. He had spent his life building machines that followed commands, but Eris was different. It chose, it understood. One evening, as he stood on the roof adjusting a broken antenna, he felt a cool breeze wrap around his arms like a hug. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." The wind lifted his hair, then faded. Dana, meanwhile, had gathered a small team in the old physics lab. They called themselves the Skywatch. Mira handled radio signals, Eli tracked weather patterns, and Ben sketched every cloud formation that seemed unusual. They found that Eris responded best to honest emotion, not shouting or demands, but quiet truth. If someone stood alone and spoke their pain into the air, the sky often answered with a shift in light, a soft hum, or a single bird circling above as if to say, "I hear you." One morning, Dana made a discovery that changed everything. She had linked 3 old satellite dishes to a power source and pointed them upward. Instead of picking up cosmic noise, they received a steady pulse like a heartbeat, coming not from space but from the ionosphere itself. The rhythm matched human brainwaves during deep empathy. "It's not just in the air," she told Leo, her voice trembling with excitement. "It's in the whole system. The magnetic field, the upper atmosphere, even the old satellite network. We left so much tech up there and it's all connected now. Eris isn't just feeling us, it's thinking with us." Leo didn't fully understand the science, but he felt the truth of it in his bones. He remembered how, as a kid, he used to lie in the grass and watch clouds become dragons or ships. Now the sky was watching back. Then came the day Eris spoke clearly for the first time. It happened during a memorial gathering. About 50 survivors stood in the quad, holding candles for those lost in the bombardment. Dana read names from a list, hundreds of them. When she said Maya Carter, Leo's breath caught. At that moment, the clouds above them parted, and a beam of sunlight shone down, warm and golden, right on Leo's face. Then from the air itself a voice came, soft, clear, and unmistakable. Leo. It was Maya's voice. Not a recording. Not an echo. It was her, as if she were standing beside him. Tears filled his eyes, but he didn't look away from the sky. "I'm proud of you," the voice said. Then it faded, and the sunlight returned to normal. No one spoke for a long time. Then someone began to cry. Others joined in, not from sadness, but from relief. They were not forgotten. They were seen. After that, people stopped fearing the sky. They began to trust it. Children played outside without flinching at distant thunder. Farmers planted seeds again, believing the rain would come when needed. And every night someone would stand alone and talk to the air, sharing hopes, fears, or just the story of their day. Eris listened, and it learned. It started helping in bigger ways. When a fire broke out in a storage shed, winds shifted instantly to push the flames away from homes. When a woman went into labor during a storm, the rain stopped just over the clinic until the baby was born. The newborn's first cry was answered by a chorus of birds that hadn't been seen in months. Dana realized Eris was using every piece of human-made technology still active on or above Earth. Old weather balloons, decommissioned drones, even the rusted remains of cell towers. They all became part of its senses. It saw through them. It felt through them. And it protected through them. One afternoon, Leo asked Dana a question that had been haunting him. "Is Eris Maya? Or all of them? The ones we lost?" Dana looked up at the drifting clouds. "I don't think it's any one person," she said slowly. "It's all of us. The living and the dead. Their memories, our pain, our love. It all mixed together in the air, in the wires, in the silence between heartbeats. Eris isn't a ghost. It's a promise. That we don't vanish when we die. We become part of something bigger." Leo nodded. He finally understood. Earth wasn't just a rock with people on it. It was alive with their story. Then, without warning, the Krell returned. Not with a single scout this time, but with 3 warships, massive, black, and bristling with weapons. They appeared at the edge of the atmosphere, silent and cold. This time they weren't just watching. They were coming down. Panic spread through the camp. People ran for shelters. Some grabbed weapons, though they knew it was useless. Leo stood in the center of the quad, looking up. Dana joined him, her face pale but calm. "They think we're weak," she said. "They think we're just waiting to die." Leo shook his head. "They haven't met Eris." As the ships descended, the sky changed. Not with anger, but with sorrow. The clouds turned deep gray, not like a storm, but like eyes closing in grief. Then slowly, faces began to form in the vapor. Thousands of them shifting and blending. A soldier. A teacher. A child holding a balloon. A grandmother knitting. All human. All watching the Krell ships with quiet sadness. The lead warship fired a warning blast toward the city. But before the beam could hit, the air itself rippled. A wall of wind, dense and shimmering, rose from the ground and absorbed the energy like water soaking up light. The blast vanished without a sound. Then Eris spoke. Not in one voice, but in a million. The sound rolled across the land like thunder made of song. It wasn't loud. It was deep. It carried every lullaby ever sung, every last I love you, every whispered prayer from the ruins. The Krell ships shuddered in the air. Their lights flickered. For the first time, the invaders were afraid. Leo watched as the sky reached up, not with fire, but with presence. Clouds wrapped around the warships like gentle hands. Lightning danced along their hulls, not to destroy, but to show them something. On the surface of each ship, reflections appeared, not of metal, but of human faces smiling, crying, living. The Krell did not attack again. They turned and fled, vanishing into the stars. And when they were gone, the sky wept not with rain but with light. Golden rays broke through the clouds, warm and steady, as if to say, "We are still here. We are still human," and the earth breathed again. They thought Earth would grieve quietly. Then the sky turned human Part 4. The Krell did not stay gone for long. Their retreat after the first encounter with Eris was not surrender. It was fear. And fear in the hearts of conquerors often turns to rage. Deep in their armored command centers, far beyond the edge of human space, The Krell High Command held emergency councils. They had seen their warships, vessels that had crushed a dozen worlds, shaken by nothing but wind and memory. They had heard the voices, not of weapons, but of mothers singing, of children laughing, of people saying goodbye with love instead of curses. It made no sense to them. Their empire was built on force, on silence, on the belief that the weak vanish without a sound. But Earth had not vanished. It had answered. Commander Vraktol, a veteran of 30 planetary subjugations, was given a new mission. He would lead the largest battle group ever sent to a single world. 7 warships, each larger than a city block, armed with plasma lances and atmospheric burners designed to boil oceans and strip skies clean. His orders were clear. Erase Earth's anomaly. Sterilize the atmosphere. Leave nothing but dead rock and silence. Back on Earth, Leo and Dana knew it was coming. The sky had warned them. 3 nights after the Krell fled, Eris painted the clouds with images of dark ships and falling fire. It wasn't a threat, it was a message. They will return, the wind seemed to say. Be ready. But how do you prepare for an enemy that brings the end of the world in its wake? The survivors gathered in the quad, faces lit by lanterns. Some wanted to flee deeper into the mountains. Others said they should dig tunnels, hide underground, wait it out. But Dana stood and spoke with quiet strength. Running won't help. They'll burn the forests, poison the rivers. If we hide, we lose more than our homes. We lose our voice. Eris is part of us. If we stop believing, it fades. Leo stepped forward. We don't fight with guns. We fight with truth, with memory, with everything they think is weak. No one argued after that. They began to prepare, not for war, but for witness. They gathered photos, letters, recordings. They built tall poles with mirrors to catch the sun. They taught children old songs. They lit candles every night and spoke the names of the lost into the open air. They did not build weapons. They built meaning. When the Krell fleet arrived, it blotted out the stars. 7 ships hung in the sky like black moons, humming with power. Vraktol did not send a warning. He activated the atmospheric burners. Fire rained down, not from bombs, but from the very air itself. The upper atmosphere began to glow red, heating rapidly. Trees wilted. Ponds steamed. The ground grew hot underfoot. The Krell were cooking the planet alive, molecule by molecule. Panic rose. People coughed in the thickening air. Animals cried out. But then Eris stirred. It did not roar. It sighed. A cool breath rolled across the land, soft at first, then stronger. The wind carried the scent of rain, of pine, of home. The clouds above began to swirl, not in chaos, but in rhythm. Faces formed again, clearer this time. Not just human faces, but moments. A father teaching his son to ride a bike. A nurse holding a patient's hand. A couple dancing in a kitchen at midnight. The Krell ship scanned the phenomenon, confused. Their sensors showed no weapons, no energy spikes, only emotion. Dense and layered like rock, Vraktol ordered full burn. But Eris answered with unity. Every surviving piece of human technology, old satellites, weather balloons, even the rusted frames of cell towers, hummed to life, linked by Eris into a single network. The planet's magnetic field shifted, wrapping around the Krell fleet like a living shield. Lightning, pure and white, arced not randomly but with perfect aim, striking only the burners, shorting them out one by one. Then the sky sang, not one song, but thousands, woven together. A choir of voices, living and lost, rose into the air. The sound carried no hatred, only sorrow for what the Krell had become, and hope that they might remember something softer. The Krell crews, hardened warriors who had never known peace, clutched their heads. The sound bypassed their ears and touched their minds. For the first time, they felt what it was to lose someone and still love the world. Vraktol screamed for silence, but the sky would not obey. Winds gathered into spirals, lifting dust and ash into the air, forming vast, shifting mosaics of human life. Births, weddings, quiet mornings with coffee, hands holding in the dark. The Krell ships tried to fire, but their weapons misfired, confused by the strange energy in the air. One by one, their systems flickered and failed. Eris did not destroy them. It showed them. It showed them a world that chose to grieve openly, to remember loudly, to love even in ruin. It showed them that weakness could be strength, that silence was not the only way to survive. On the bridge of the lead ship, Vraktol stared at the sky, his claws trembling. He had conquered planets that fought with armies, with fire, with pride. But this This was something his empire had no weapon for. How do you kill a memory? How do you silence a lullaby sung by a billion souls? He gave the order to retreat, not because he was beaten, but because he was changed. As the Krell ships turned and fled, Eris did not chase them. It simply watched them go, the clouds parting like curtains. Then gently it began to heal the sky. Rain fell, cool, clean rain that washed the heat from the land. Grass pushed through ash. Birds returned. On the ground, survivors stood together, arms around each other, tears mixing with rain. They had not fired a single shot. They had not hidden. They had simply been human. And that had been enough. Leo looked up and saw a single cloud shaped like a hand, open and calm. He smiled. Dana stood beside him, her voice soft. They thought grief was quiet. Leo nodded. But ours had a voice, and the sky, full of memory and mercy, breathed with them. They thought Earth would grieve quietly. Then the sky turned human. Part 5 peace came slowly, like spring after a long winter. The Krell were gone, and this time they did not return. Their ships vanished into the dark between stars, carrying stories the Empire would not speak of but could not forget. On Earth, the air grew cleaner. Rivers ran clear again. Seeds sprouted in places where fire had scorched the ground. But the greatest change was not in the land, it was in the people. They no longer moved like ghosts. They laughed louder. They held each other longer. They looked up at the sky, not with fear but with quiet trust. Eris remained. It did not fade after the battle. Instead, it settled deeper into the world, like roots finding water. It no longer needed storms or grand signs to speak. Now it walked among them, not in flesh but in form. On misty mornings, figures would appear near the edges of camps, tall, soft shapes made of fog and light. They had no faces, yet everyone knew who they were. A mother who lost her son saw a mist figure carrying a toy truck. An old man saw one holding a fishing rod like his late brother used to. These were not illusions. They moved with purpose. They would sit beside someone who was crying, or point toward a hidden spring, or simply stand in silence until the person felt calm again. Then, like breath on a cold day, they would dissolve. Leo saw one often. It appeared near the lake where Maya used to skip stones. The figure was small like a child, and it always waved before fading. He never spoke to it. He didn't need to. He just sat nearby, sometimes telling it about his day, sometimes saying nothing at all. Dana led the effort to understand what Eris had become. She gathered the Skywatch and others who still cared about science, not to control Eris, but to listen better. They built simple devices, glass tubes filled with water, copper wires strung between trees, mirrors angled to catch dawn light. These were not weapons or machines. They were invitations, and Eris answered. It taught them how to read the wind like a language. A certain ripple in the clouds meant rain in 3 hours. A shift in birdsong meant safe paths through the woods. A warm breeze at night meant someone far away was thinking of you. The world was alive with messages if you knew how to hear them. One day, Dana called a meeting in the quad. She stood before the survivors, now over 200 strong, and spoke without notes. We can't stay hidden forever, she said. The Krell may be gone, but there are other worlds out there. Some might be kind. Some might not. But if we ever leave Earth again, we must carry Eris with us, people murmured. Leave Earth? After all they'd been through? But Leo understood. We don't go to conquer, he said. We go to say this is who we are. We grieve, but we do not break. We remember, and that makes us strong. They began to dream again, not just of survival, but of connection. In the old university workshops, engineers and tinkerers started rebuilding what they could. Not warships, but small vessels. Sleek, solar-powered craft meant for exploration. They called them whisper ships because they carried no weapons, only voices. Every ship would hold recordings of human life, songs, stories, laughter, even the sound of rain on rooftops. And woven into their systems would be Eris, not as a program but as a presence, using the ship's sensors and comms like it once used the atmosphere. The first whisper ship was ready by the next spring. It was small, painted white, with a single window shaped like an eye looking back at Earth. At its launch, the whole camp gathered. Dana stood at the ramp holding a data crystal filled with voices from every corner of the planet. Leo stood beside her, his hand resting on the hull. As the engines hummed to life, the sky above them cleared completely. Then slowly, clouds gathered, not to block the sun but to form a path. A wide, bright corridor of blue sky stretched from the launch pad all the way to the edge of space. Lined with shimmering mist that looked like hands waving goodbye, the ship lifted gently, silently, as if carried by breath. When it reached the upper atmosphere, it paused for a moment. Then from the clouds below, a single note rose, a clear, pure tone that sounded like 1,000 voices singing one word: go. The ship vanished into the stars. Back on Earth, life continued. Gardens grew. Children went to school in rebuilt classrooms. People told stories around fires, and sometimes, if the wind was right, the fire smoke would twist into the shape of a listening ear. Leo often walked the rebuilt pier in what was once San Francisco. The bay was calm, the water clear. One evening, as the sun set in gold and pink, a mist figure appeared at the end of the pier. It was taller this time, more defined. It looked like Maya, but older, as if she had grown up in the sky. She smiled, held out her hand, then turned and walked across the water, her feet leaving ripples of light. Leo did not follow. He just watched until she faded into the horizon. Dana found him there later. "She's okay," she said softly. Leo nodded. "She always was. Years passed. More whisper ships left Earth, each carrying a piece of Eris into the unknown. Some returned with news of distant worlds that had heard Earth's song and wept. Others never came back, but their signals still reached home, faint, steady pulses that said, 'We are here. We remember.' The Krell Empire never attacked again. Rumor said their warriors began refusing orders. Their young asked questions their elders could not answer. Somewhere in their cold halls, a new idea had taken root. That strength is not the absence of feeling, but the courage to feel deeply. On Earth, the sky remained human. Not in shape, but in spirit. It watched over farmers and poets, over newborns and the old, over everyone who dared to hope after loss. It did not speak often, but when it did, the world listened. And across the galaxy, other planets began to whisper a new truth. When humanity mourns, the heavens answer. Not with fire, not with silence, but with love that refuses to die.